Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. Bernadette Nixon, CEO of Algolia. Welcome, Bernadette.
It's great to be here, Alex. Thanks.
Yeah, good to have you here. And where is here? Because I was expecting a Boston accent, and you being in Boston or in San Francisco. But I had a pleasant surprise that and not to say that there's anything wrong if you weren't in Boston. But whereabouts are you, and where are you from?
So I'm originally from England, but been living in the States for over 20 years now. But I'm doing the podcast today from Paris.
Oh, very nice, very nice. A nice mix there. Have fond memories of SaaStock events in Paris, but it's been a while. Hopefully, we'll be picking those up soon. So, Paris, are you at the Algolia office?
We have our headquarters are in San Francisco, but we also have a large presence here in Paris.
Yeah. Okay. Very, 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 very cool. And so, Bernadette, you mentioned that you're originally from England, been in the US for 20 years. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. As a person, your journey to being a CEO, how you ended up in the US, and why you've been living there for 20 years.
Sure. I went from Switzerland to the US. So I was working, I'd always been in sales and commercial side of things in the UK, but moved to Switzerland and a career change, if you like, working for the United Nations for their IT shop, and decided wanted to get back to my passion and went to America to do it. So came up through the ranks on the go-to-market side of the house. And then in the latter years, really became involved with products and product strategy. And so it was just a natural sort of evolution going into the CEO role, which I love because of the impact that you can have, mainly on people, both within your company, but also at your customers and partners. So, and that, I guess that's sort of one of my hallmarks. Everybody does the job differently, but that outside in perspective in doing the role is great. So in the last 2 weeks, I've seen probably almost 10 customers, partners, prospects. It's been fabulous being back on the road again.
Good stuff. Great. I love speaking to customers, love being on the road, but for 18 months have pretty much been not just in this room, but there hasn't been as much travel. But I think, like we mentioned before we started recording, things are starting to get a little bit back to normal, and very glad to kind of see that, and the horizon of like normality, coming back. But do you think, actually, just on that point, and I didn't know, because certainly for me, I was speaking to your comms sort of team before. I used to spend a lot of time on the plane, and I think, John from your team mentioned similarly, he was on the plane perhaps every week. Do you foresee that, and I don't know if your life was like that, but you'll be doing as much travel, or would you want to be doing as much travel, in the near future?
Probably not. I mean, prior to COVID, I was probably on the road at least 45 weeks out of the year, if not more, some years. And I can't see us getting back to that. In fact, I was speaking to our co-founder, Julien Lemoine, this morning, and he's been in the office all this week, but he said, we definitely need a hybrid because, you're so much more productive. You don't have that commute time. So I do think the hybrid, sometimes in the office and often at home, is really the future.
What is it? If you're on the road 45 weeks a year and you're married, what is the secret to keeping the relationship going? Because I can imagine, obviously, depending on the spouse, they might not be the happiest. But what's your secret?
Our secret was having a spouse that traveled pretty much as much.
All right.
And we occasionally met up in different cities that we would find ourselves in. So but funnily enough, we were happiest together. So COVID has actually been lovely.
Good stuff, but good to hear. And so you're CEO of Algolia. How long have you been with Algolia for?
I joined in May of last year, so right slap bang in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, okay. Interesting times to join. How did you feel about that when joining just as the world was kind of coming into all this fear, uncertainty, and doubt?
I mean, it was the start of new patterns, really. I mean, I could never have imagined taking a position, and certainly not a CEO position, without having met, the whole board and the exec team, and none of that happened. It was all over Zoom. So, I mean, it really was the start of new patterns. But in some respects, we got a bonus out of the environment, insofar as me introducing myself to the whole team, I did it via Zoom. I wasn't in front of, in the team in San Francisco or in Paris or London or wherever. So it was a level playing field for everybody. So there were some bonuses, although it was certainly very strange.
And why did you join Algolia? What was it about the company, the opportunity that made you want to join? Really kind of curious to know.
Sure. So I've got a fair bit of experience in the search market, if you like, from both ends of our competitive set. On the one hand, it's purpose-built SaaS apps to solve one customer problem, and on the other, it's open source that can solve a plethora of problems. We're neither one of those, because they have the benefits, but they have significant drawbacks, in my opinion. We're neither one. We are an API-first product, an API-first company, which means certain things. And certainly APIs are nothing new. REST APIs, they've been around for years. But to have a product that is an API first product is very different. We take on all of the backward compatibility issues. So you never have to change your app if we change, which we do frequently, our API. You never have to change it. We build the speed in, we build the performance in, we have, amazing documentation so you can get it to do what you want it to do. So I having experience at both ends of our competitive set, I truly believed in the positioning that Algolia had adopted right from day one with the API first approach. And now it's sort of hit mainstream. Back when Algolia was formed, it wasn't mainstream. So there was great foresight and innovation with the team, and those are qualities that we still retain today. So it's really all of that attracted me to the team and the company.
And how does it work? Was it like Nicholas Design, who was the or still is co-founder and former CEO? Is it Nicholas kind of reaching out and getting recommendations of finding like Bernadette is the best person to replace me, or does it come from the board or the investors, or a bit of both? It's
different in every situation. In this situation, Nico, after he had finished doing the C round, took a well-deserved deep breath and figured out that he wanted to hand the reins over, because he felt that having a more commercial CEO was the right thing for the company for the next phase that it was about to enter. And so therefore he started to search. And the beauty of that is that, I say I have been blessed with my co-founders. So Julien Lemoy is in the company, he's still my CTO. Nico is on the board. And they're a dream to work with. It's not always like that. And you often only hear the nightmares, those nightmare stories. But I got really, really lucky, and all three of us work incredibly well together.
Fantastic. Well, in a couple of weeks' time, October the 12th or the 13th, that you're speaking at SaaStock EMEA online, and you'll be in conversation with Philippe Botteri at Accel, one of Algolia's investors, and a longtime friend of SaaStock, as are Algolia, actually, and really excited for that. Today, I think we're going to be touching on a couple of the things that you might be discussing a bit more in detail with Philippe. But yeah, we really wanted to look at the topic of combining top-down and the bottoms-up sales motion in the most efficient way. So you happy to get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump in.
Let's do it. So in what scenario should a company use a top-down strategy?
So I would say it's when you have complex product, multiple stakeholders, complex integrations. And as a result of all of those, quite often you also have a reliance upon a systems integration community to help customers to be able to implement and get the most out of your product. If those are the characteristics of your product, then a top-down, often referred to as an enterprise approach, is absolutely applicable. I'd say the other thing that plays into this is, when you've got very high ticket prices, so a high average selling price. And the reason that comes into play is because of human behavior. When you think about it, if you're making a small purchase, yourself, it's a no-brainer, or you're motivated by the gain that you could get either in business benefits or in terms of personal development and growth. Whereas when you're making a significant purchase, it's often not motivated by the gain. It's motivated more by fear and risk mitigation, because it's a significant purchase, when you buy a house yourself or anything like that. So, as you get into those big ERP systems and that sort of stuff, then, it's you're naturally going to be adopting a top-down sales approach.
What about on the flip side then, like, what scenarios should the companies use the bottoms-up strategy?
Yeah, and there's a lot of terms that often get used interchangeably here. So bottoms up, it could be, people refer to it as self-service, they might refer to it as freemium, or PLG, which is product-led growth. But essentially, in order for you to have a successful bottoms up strategy, you need to have an incredible product, and an incredible product that delivers on the value that you promise, that brand promise to your customers, in a way that somebody is able to pick it up and get value out of it without having to have that services team be their guide. So often those types of products appeal to developers, and they're able to get going and really be, smart and creative with your products very quickly out of the gate. And if that is the case, I would say that's table stakes. And in order to then sort of dig under the surface a little bit more, you've got to have great documentation. Because think about it, you're expecting them to be self-service customers. So you've got to have great documentation that enables them to create what they're looking to do. It's got to be ease of use. You've got to have, I think, for your own business growth plans, you've also got to have the one version. So it doesn't matter whether somebody's coming on with a freemium or a pay-as-you-go model, but they can graduate up to it's, proliferating throughout an organization. And so that's really, another great thing. And, in the B2B space, I think Forrester had the stat that, almost 75% of business to business buyers now would rather self-educate, buy an app online and, self-serve than speak with a salesperson.
Yeah, no, definitely. And good sort of stats there to refer to. But when should you consider using both? Is there a specific stage, and like what examples? And I guess like Algolia as well. Like, do you use both approaches?
We do, but the answer to your question is it depends, like a lot of things in life. So I'll maybe sort of give a couple of examples to make that come alive. I mean, Twilio, for example, API first product, fantastic company. Jeff's book, Ask Your Developer, is sort of a staple in the environment now. They didn't go hardcore tops down. I mean, they still have a very vibrant, massive product-led bottoms-up growth business to this day, but they didn't layer into that the top-down model in a significant way until after they'd gone public. Whereas on the other hand, for somebody like us, for example, we actually augmented our product-led growth strategy pretty early on. And part of the reason for that was because there were multiple stakeholders, some of whom were in the business side of things, as opposed to purely a developer, that would get involved. So it really does depend upon your product and, the characteristics of how somebody gets started with it, and then how it proliferates through an organization.
So Algolia has been using both from the beginning, that's been baked into the product from the get-go.
Yes, I mean, when we were originally designing our product, we designed it for product-led growth, which meant that we also made a decision that we wanted somebody to be able to get started with it, deliver value for their organization or themselves without the need for services. So there had to be that self-service capability. And with every single product we now introduce to the market, because we've now become a multi-product company, that, we stay true to that original design principle.
How have you managed to combine both sales motions efficiently? Do you have any examples there, case studies that you could share?
Yes, so there's a whole bunch. So So, I mean, right now we have over 10,000 customers. So we wouldn't have gotten to that level and that number if we hadn't have had our product-led growth strategy. We find that a lot of it, you need to be guided by the customer. So some people want to start using a freemium, or they want to swipe their credit card and start on your pay-go plans, and they want to, self-serve themselves, even to the extent where they have some quite significant bills each month, or, occasionally, every other month they might have, depending upon their business cycle, they might have some significant increases in costs that way. But if they're getting started, or they don't have predictability, they're experimenting, then that's a great way for them to get started. And so you want them to be able to interact with you in the way that they want to. But as these products get proliferated across organizations, then, other people come into the mix, managers, leaders come into the mix, and procurement gets involved, and they want to make sure that the company is certainly getting a good deal. And so at that point, they may want to interact with you directly. Or it could be that as they get more sophisticated with your products, there may be some enterprise-only capabilities or service-level agreements that are to certain types of companies or government agencies become really, really important. And therefore, that's how they mitigate their risk. And so therefore, they want to interact with you. Or sometimes their usage just grows to a certain extent that they want to get a better deal than they can get through self-service on a website. So really, we have used the customer interaction and the customer feedback to really be our guide as to when we moved from purely product-led growth into the combination of bottoms up and top down. So listening to your customers is, a really important factor in designing this, frankly, I think.
No, 100%. And, I think like recently, SaaStock, we've been doing like a ton of customer calls. In fact, we made it our quarterly theme for this quarter. And, just sometimes you just kind of forget like how important it is to do that, and just the great kind of inputs that you get, which really kind of help shape the product and the product that they want to use. I
would say there's another element as well, which is as your product, if you think about the journey from startup to scale up to public company, as your product matures, in your earlier days, and indeed as you continually go along, for us indeed anyway, you appeal to the innovators, the early adopters, and those guys don't want everything neatly packaged. They want to be able to tinker with it and figure it out. Whereas when you do cross that chasm and you start targeting the early majority, you'll find that those customers want and expect to interact with you in a very different way. And so sometimes it's customers' buying characteristics that you need to listen to, but the other is in crossing that chasm, you will find that the early majority really want some handholding that you didn't have to do in the early days. And so now, even though we designed our product and our company with, you didn't need any services to get going, we find those companies in that early majority, they want some handholding. Because this may be, we're a disruptive technology, and therefore they want somebody who's been there before and done it to help guide them, whether that's us or a partner. So now we have a very small services capability to be able to be the experts to help guide our customers. So it could either be, still market dynamics, it's just a different segment of the market. And therefore, if you find that you're going after those often larger companies, more mature companies, because they want a more mature product, then you'll find you have to change what you're offering or how you're offering it in order to be able to appeal to them.
Well, I believe we did talk with Philippe at SaaStock EMEA Online. You'll partially be digging into this topic, and so we don't want to give too much away now to the audience that's listening. So I mean, of course, they should tune in to SaaStock EMEA online and to your talk with Philippe. It'll be a great event. So really kind of looking forward to that. So from this point of the conversation around top down and bottom up, we'll leave that there. But I've got a couple more questions really to ask you, and hopefully fairly straightforward. So I'm just sort of curious to know, as I often ask our guests, what is your favorite business book of all time? And also, what are you currently reading? Probably more around business, but it could be non-business also.
Sure. One of my all-time favorite books is called Execution: The Discipline of Getting Things Done, and it was by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan. And it was really about, you can have a great strategy, but if you're not able to bring it alive by executing, and obviously you need the right team, and there's a whole host of things that go into that, but it gets really practical in terms of looking at your annual calendar and what you should be thinking about when. And I read it many years ago as I was sort of going up in my career, from sort of second to third level manager. And it was phenomenal because it gave me, I didn't stick to it directly, but it gave me some really cool practical tips, and it just helped guide me. So that's one of my all-time favorites. And right now, I'm listening to, because I listen to a whole bunch of books on Audible as well as read them, but I'm listening to No Rules, and that's Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention by Reed Hastings and Aaron Mayer. So that's phenomenal, because there are certain things that exist in the tech environment today, and it gives you just sometimes a different vantage point to look at some of those. So I often make notes as I'm reading or listening to a book, and then figure out what I'll take and what I'll implement as a result.
Yeah, no, definitely. The first Execution. Never heard of it, but that's great. I love to kind of get a new tip, so we'll definitely be looking that up. No Rules. Read that earlier this year. I then kind of tried to do a bit of mini book club within SaaStock, and we spoke about this and to see what things could we implement from this, and it was super interesting. A lot of contrarian viewpoints that Reed kind of has, and the culture there, but definitely some things that we kind of would be keen to kind of bring into SaaStock. Still haven't done sort of fully yet, but a great book. So definitely, strong recommendation, and look forward to reading Execution. So great. Totally agree with you. You can have a great strategy and spend all the time on that, but if you don't execute, you're not going to get anywhere. And what's the best bit of advice sort of given to you as a CEO, or best lesson learned that you could share with the audience?
Probably a couple of things. One is hiring for stage-specific experience. So you're hiring for skills, and you're hiring for cultural fit. Those two, are obvious and table stakes. But sometimes it's not obvious for the stage-specific experience. For example, you might be a startup and you're growing rapidly, and you bring somebody in from a great blue chip, name in your industry, and you expect them to, know the roadmap of how you fully get from point A to point B. But the reality is that sometimes they've seen what great looks like, but they haven't been the architect of the journey of how that organization got to great. So therefore, when you're in a startup or in a scale up like we are right now, you've got to have people that not only have seen what great looks like for where you're headed, given your growth trajectory, but you also need the people that have ideally not just seen the journey, but been part of architecting that journey, so that they know, I took too big of a jump there. I need to take 2 steps back and redo that. When they do it for you, they're not going to take too big of a jump and take 2 steps back. They probably will on something else, but they won't make the same mistake twice. So I think hiring for stage-specific experience is absolutely critical. And I'm not saying you have to wipe out everybody you've got and replace them with people like that. You need a blend, as in, most things in life, you need a blend. So that'd be one. The second one would be pick your North Star metrics and be maniacal about them.
Good advice there. On the hiring one, so say, and I think I know the answer would be, but you're at 1 million in revenue, you want to get to 10 million in revenue. You're hiring your sales candidates for that. Do you then look for somebody, is the ideal candidate the one that has architected that 1 to 10 journey before, over and above somebody that hasn't done that, but seems to have like the potential or the capability to potentially do that? So it's going to be an advantage if you've done that already? Is that your preference?
100%. I mean, in any company that is growing fast, you need builders, you need people that have not just lived it at that stage, but they have built it to that stage and beyond. That's the ideal, in my opinion. It's all opinion, but that's mine.
Yeah. And then, so you're speaking at SaaStock EMEA, as you mentioned, next month with Philippe. Can you give sort of insight into what you'll be speaking about on the day?
Sure. So a little bit of what we've touched on today. So the tops down, bottoms up models, when to use them, how to build a community around freemium, because there's so many ancillary benefits when you get to doing that, but also, more on the sort of the left brain side of things, which is, if you're able to blend both of those, what advantage does it give you?
And where can people find you online, Bernadette?
Well, you can find me at algolia.com, as well as LinkedIn, Bernadette Nixon, and BV Nixon on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, good. So thank you so much for taking the time out today and sharing with the SaaStock audience on the SaaS Revolution Show. Really looking forward to your talk at SaaStock EMEA next month. And enjoy the rest of your time in Paris. When are you heading back to the US?
Head back home on Friday.
Okay, good stuff. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Well, take care. Thanks very much for having me, Alex.
Thanks, Bernadette.